Hi, everyone, and welcome to the video on creating acknowledgement systems. I'm Christine Downs, and I'm a trainer for NEPBIS. And this presentation was developed with the support of the NEPBIS network. Today, we're going to be concentrating on the Getting Started Step 6, acknowledgement systems for students and staff. And once you're done, you're going to begin to develop your acknowledgement system, get input from your stakeholders, and then schedule PD for those stakeholders, for your staff, and then maybe a brief overview for students and families. So once we define our expectations, explicitly teach it to our students, and then prompt them to use those new expectations, it's then time to acknowledge and monitor their behavior. When they get it right, we want to let them know. We want to reinforce that appropriate behavior. And the definition we're going to use here for reinforcement is a response to somebody's behavior that's intended to make that person more likely to behave that way again. Okay. There's lots of science behind behavior, and we do know that reinforcement tends to increase that behavior, meaning that when a student get something they really like, something desirable, or if they escape something undesirable, something they don't like, following a specific behavior, that behavior can be strengthened and it's more likely to happen again in the future. So here's an example of that. If a student's given verbal praise for persisting with a difficult assignment, the student's likely to persist later on with difficult assignments. So a teacher saying, good job, you can do it. I like how you're persevering. I know it's tough, but keep going, right? Giving that positive reinforcement. However, it's also easy to inadvertently strengthen an inappropriate behavior by providing reinforcement that we might have thought was a punishment. So let's look at example number 2. If a student is removed from the classroom after they refuse to do a difficult assignment, the student is more likely to act up later when he doesn't want to or can't complete the work, right? We've given them something that's actually strengthening the behavior we don't want to see, which is removing them from something that was giving them stress, a difficult assignment. So we want to be careful that we're encouraging students and we're providing reinforcements for the behaviors we want to see rather than those we don't want to see. Often we hear staff saying, why is this important? Why should we have a reinforcement system? Why can't we teach the behaviors to the kids and expect that they just do it? Why can't they just behave? Well, it's human nature, right? Just because you know the rules doesn't mean you always follow them. Let's think about driving. Most drivers at one time or another speed, right? Even though it's the law to follow the speed limit, and even though there's a risk of a policeman pulling us over and giving us a ticket, we still do it. Not because we don't know how to drive the speed limit, because our motivation isn't there. Our motivation might be higher to get where we're going quickly, right? Or everybody else is on the road speeding. So you know what, I'm just keeping up with traffic. But that's not an excuse. That might be the reason, right? We do it. We're not motivated, right? The other thing that we hear is, reinforcement doesn't really happen in adult life, or students are only going to behave just so they'll be rewarded. Again, these are myths, somewhat, right? We know that adult life has lots of reinforcement in it. Think of things like cashback coupons when we shop at certain stores, airline miles for certain credit cards, gas points when we shop at a certain grocery store, right? Cafe cards that give us a free sandwich or a free meal of some sort, right? Cash back for buying a car, even a reduction in our insurance premium because we follow the rules, right? What we should be doing anyway. And yet there's a reinforcement and a reward for that. So that increases the motivation to do something, right? I'm going to get a lower rate on my insurance. Okay, I'm more likely to drive the speed limit. Think about how people might react if police, instead of looking for speeders. We're looking for those driving the speed limit, pulled them over and gave them $20. Think about how many people would do the behavior we wanted just for the opportunity to get the reward. It's the same as kids. Walking or running in the hallway might not be a big deal to them, but it's a big deal to the staff. Keeps kids safe, right? The hallways stay orderly, but we want to increase their motivation. So if they're more motivated to walk in the hallway because they might get a dojo point or a ticket or a verbal praise from an adult, who cares? We want to increase that motivation so they'll do it. Because after repeating that behavior again and again, around 30 times, it becomes a habit. And now that's how the hallways function. So we want to increase that motivation if we can. There's lots of benefits to acknowledgement systems. I mentioned the increase in doing the behavior again, but most importantly, it creates a more positive environment and more positive relationships between students and staff. It also helps to clarify the school expectations, and it emphasizes their importance, right? Yep, teachers are still commenting on it. I guess this is still important in our school, right? Keeps it in the front of their mind that they should be following those expectations. And it reduces the need for those time-consuming disciplinary measures, because that takes time, from stopping the kid to writing up the referral, you meet with the principal, all of that loses instructional time. There's no one right system. You might use a token economy system where students can redeem their points or their school cash at a school store, or like up here in this photo. Just keep in mind, you don't only have to have tangible things in your stores. You can have coupons for things like sitting in the teacher's chair or getting to the front of the lunch line, or having a quiet lunch with two friends somewhere out of the cafeteria, right? You can earn privileges or social activities or escape type of activities, maybe a one-night extension on your homework. You can put them all in the school store, and those ones are free. You also might have something simply like putting a hand print up or some other kind of celebration where that's the whole reinforcement. Student earns that, they write their name on it, they put it up for all to see, or pictures, right? Some schools do give out tickets and things, and instead of a school store, they go into a bucket by grade level or classroom or even by whole school. And when it fills up, that group celebrates. And so the nice thing is maybe I only had one or two tickets in the bucket, but when it fills up, we all celebrate. Or for teachers, boy, I have to give a lot of tickets to that high needs student because they need a lot of reinforcement. Doesn't seem fair that they have so many more tickets to spend at the school store. But if they're going in the bucket, that's helping everybody because we're all going to celebrate when that fills out. So there's lots of different ways to do it. And you can layer. You can even do special little celebrations like here, this is the golden plunger that's left in the cleanest classroom at the end of the day by the custodial staff. And it's just celebrated by, hey, that's what you got the golden plunger for the day. And maybe there's an announcement over the loudspeaker. But teachers report that kids are maniacally cleaning up the classroom at the end of the day just to be acknowledged. So it's not really about what you get. It's that feeling of people noticing and appreciating what you do. It builds that habit. We want to feed or pay greater attention to what we want rather than what we don't want, because whatever we feed, that's going to grow. And we want it to be the appropriate behavior. And we don't want you to withhold or take back a reinforcer or use it as a bribe, because that ends up diminishing the power of the system. So saying, if you do this, I'll give you 5 tickets. No, if we want to encourage them doing it, we might reinforce those around that student to encourage that behavior, but we want them to go, you know what, I'm going to do that behavior because I want the ticket. So that becomes internally motivated. And eventually, again, it becomes a habit. And we don't want you to take it back. If they've earned it, they've earned it. They might not earn the next one, but they earned that one. So we don't want to diminish the system. The most important part of a reinforcement system is that behavior-specific praise. We want you to describe what the behavior is, be specific to who you're acknowledging, right? And make it a positive statement. So I love class. I love how when I was talking to the principal at my desk this morning, you all came in really quietly and orderly, sat down and got right to your do now. I really appreciate that. That was very respectful of you, right? Or Sammy, I see that you're being really kind. You helped your friend who dropped their books all over and you stopped what you're doing to help them. Nice job being kind to your classmate. So we want to be very clear about what we're reinforcing. Right? And we also want to have a ratio of 4-to-1 positive to negative, because negative interactions and comments and corrections ruminate in our brains and we think about them over and over. We even store them in a different part of our brain. So we need to increase the positives to even that out. So we want at least 4 positive statements to every 1 corrective statement in general, right? But keep in mind that for our students who are at highest risk for social, emotional, and behavioral disorders, we want to increase that, right, to maybe a 10, even to a 15-to-1, because they're getting a lot of corrections at them all day long. So we want to offset that with some positives. And we may have to look hard for when they're sitting quietly or come into class orderly, and we need to react very quickly when we see those positives. Some key features of an acknowledgement system: make it relevant, right? It's tied to the expectations that we've already taught. It's age appropriate and culturally relevant to our population. We vary it up, mix it up, have different things that they can earn, right? Social privileges, right? And try to have some choice within there. And for staff, we want to make it efficient, easy to deliver so that they can keep teaching and keep using it. And for students, they want to know that it's going to be predictable. It's not here one day, gone the next, or how come we haven't done it in several weeks, right? There's a predictable schedule happening. And if you can layer it, all the better, with our high frequency tickets or dojo points that they get throughout the day. Maybe they enter it into a bucket. It gets picked, a few gets picked on Friday for a prize. And then when the bucket fills up, everybody celebrates. So that's a lot of layers right there. And of course, we want to make them available to both students and staff. You should absolutely seek feedback from your staff, but also from your students and your families, right? We want everyone to know how the system works and what's particularly reinforcing. Your families might say, hey, I know my kid's coming home with all these little toys and plastic tchotchkes, but they basically just get left in the backpack and get eventually thrown away. I know my student would love to have lunch with their favorite teacher from last year who they don't get to see, or things like that. They might have some great ideas for you. So get their input, especially from students, because if they're not motivated by what the system is, then they're not going to buy in. One way to see if your system is working or if they're getting feedback is just to walk through your school and do some random interviews, just casually, and try to get a broad demographic representation, but ask them, what's the last thing that you were acknowledged for? Or do you feel recognized for good behavior in this school? And see what they say. It can be very eye-opening. So once you start to brainstorm or you think about what you already have in your building, you want to create a matrix so that you can train staff with it, you can share it with families and students, with substitutes or new teachers that come in mid-year, right? It explains how the high frequency, the ones that happen right in the moment, work and what you do with that. Do I turn it in? Can I buy something with it? Does it go in a bucket? How does it work? Then some intermittent or unpredictable things like drawings or when it fills up, because we don't know when those are going to happen or who's going to win. That makes it even more fun. And again, we have to work a little harder so we increase our chances or we get to that filled bucket. And then some long-term celebrations that the school might focus on. Every classroom filling up their bucket twice, then we'll celebrate as a school. And don't forget, adults like to be acknowledged too. So find ways to acknowledge their implementing of all these new practices that we're teaching them and asking them to use with students. It might be things that just show your appreciation for them, some candy, a special little gift, or you might have shout outs that students and staff add to and express our appreciation for the adults. Sometimes when there's drawings, the teacher who wrote the ticket also gets a prize, and parking can be really high valued prize for a lot of schools. Right? So for staff, make sure you're being sincere, that you're offering it to all the staff in your building, not just teachers. Don't forget your office staff, your custodial and maintenance staff, all your support staff in your building, right? And make sure everybody's involved. If you're looking for some more ideas of acknowledgement practices and systems, you can go to the NEPBIS website and go to the exemplar repository under the Tier 1 dropdown and get some samples from other schools. So your guidelines are to create a quick, easy form of acknowledgement for across your school in both classroom and non-classroom settings. Consider things that are already in place. You may have teachers that have great ideas. You might just want to expand upon them. Develop that written procedure so that everybody knows how it works. And do explain to staff that in the beginning, when we first start handing out those things to try to change or establish a new behavior, we're going to use a lot of reinforcers, flood them with it, and then we'll pull back and only use a few. We don't want to stop entirely because that sends a message it's not important anymore. But we're not going to use as many reinforcers as we do in the beginning. Don't forget to schedule some professional development to teach staff how it works, and maybe a quick overview for students and families. So now we'd like you to complete the acknowledgement worksheet. You can get that off the platform or from your trainer. Brainstorm those high frequency, intermittent, and long-term acknowledgements. Remember, you want layers so everybody can benefit. Brainstorm some ideas for staff, and then create that matrix. Once you get things kind of rolling, make sure you solicit from students, staff, and families to make sure it's working right and you're offering things that they like, and then add to your action plan. Okay, so thanks for watching this video on the Getting Started step of acknowledgement systems for students and staff. Good luck planning. I know you're going to do a great job. Please feel free to reach out to your trainer if you have any further questions. Take care.